fiancé called off our wedding the night before. Then her father quietly asked me to read one last message. I was standing in the middle of our apartment, surrounded by wedding decorations when my fiancé, Sarah, walked through the door and said, "I can't marry you tomorrow." My heart instantly dropped. I honestly thought I was dreaming. We'd spent almost a year planning everything, and the ceremony was less than 24 hours away. The flowers were already at the venue, our families had flown in, and my dress was hanging beside the bedroom door. I asked her what had happened, but she just kept crying and repeating, I'm sorry, I can't explain it. I felt my entire body go cold. I begged her to tell me if she'd met someone else, if she'd changed her mind, anything. She shook her head and whispered, "Please don't hate me." Then she grabbed a suitcase and walked out. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor surrounded by wedding invitations, trying to understand how someone could change their entire future in one sentence. The next morning, Sarah's father showed up at my door. I expected him to apologize or tell me where she'd gone, but instead he looked completely devastated. He handed me a folded piece of paper and said, "She told me to give you this only if she actually left." My hands started shaking. I opened it and saw a message from Sarah. The first sentence made me freeze. "If you're reading this, then my plan worked." I couldn't breathe. I looked at her father and asked, "What plan?" He just lowered his head and whispered, "Keep reading." The message explained that Sarah had discovered something terrifying 3 weeks earlier. Someone had been accessing her bank accounts, changing passwords, and sending threatening messages from anonymous numbers. At first she thought it was identity theft. Then she discovered something much worse. The person had been using information from inside our wedding planning documents. Guest addresses, travel dates, hotel reservations, even the exact time our ceremony was scheduled to begin. Sarah became convinced someone close to us was watching everything. She didn't tell me because she was afraid whoever was behind it would realize we discovered them. Instead, she decided to cancel the wedding publicly and disappear, so whoever was monitoring us would think she'd left me. I was still trying to understand what I was reading when Sarah's father took out his phone and showed me dozens of screenshots. The messages weren't random threats. They were detailed enough to make my blood run cold. One said, "She won't make it to the ceremony." Another included a photograph of the venue from across the street. I could barely look at the screen. My heart was pounding. Then Sarah's father admitted something that made me completely lose it. He had known about the threats for almost 2 weeks but hadn't told me because Sarah believed I might accidentally reveal the plan if I knew. "She trusted you," he whispered, but she didn't know who else we could trust. Then came the twist nobody expected. The police traced the anonymous messages to a computer, registered under the name of one of our wedding vendors. At first, everyone assumed the vendor was responsible, but investigators discovered someone had been using the vendor's login credentials remotely. The person behind it wasn't a stranger. It was Sarah's former landlord. Months earlier, he'd illegally copied personal information from her rental application, including her social security details and emergency contacts. He had become obsessed after Sarah rejected his advances when she'd moved out. He tracked her online, discovered the engagement, and started monitoring public wedding information. He wasn't planning to attend the ceremony. He was trying to frighten Sarah into believing someone close to her was dangerous, so she'd isolate herself from everyone. When Sarah finally returned home 3 days later, she walked through the door looking exhausted. I didn't yell. I didn't ask why she hadn't trusted me. I just hugged her. She started crying into my shoulder and whispered, "I'm sorry I made you think I didn't love you." I told her, "You scared me more than anything ever has, but you're safe now." The wedding was postponed for several months while the investigation continued. Eventually, we got married in a small ceremony with only our closest family present. There were no giant decorations, no huge guest list, and no expensive reception. Just us. Looking back, the hardest part wasn't having our wedding canceled. It was realizing how quickly fear can make someone believe they have to protect the person they love by pushing them away. Sarah thought disappearing would keep me safe. Instead, it nearly broke both of us. But when we finally stood together and said our vows months later, I understood something I'd never forget. Sometimes love isn't about having all the answers. Sometimes it's simply looking at someone who is terrified and saying, "You don't have to face this alone." Would you have forgiven Sarah for disappearing without telling you the truth? Yes or no?